I've never prayed for a result. I always just pray for safety and health. But this game, I was like, God, if you can help us pull this one out, I would really appreciate it. I promise you I won't ask you again.
Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com, and many of you out there know all too well what it's like to raise a child in the world of sports, but few of us have had the experience of our guest and his family, and we're welcoming father of Alabama football legend, its first ever and only Heisman winning quarterback, the number one overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young. Today we're talking to his dad, Craig Young. Craig, welcome. Thanks so much for doing this.
No, it's my pleasure to be here.
Hey, Craig, I want to start. Bryce has such a cool story, but coming from the other side of the country to play in Tuscaloosa, it's not an easy thing to do, I would imagine. As somebody with a great opportunity to pick and choose where he plays, I mean, y'all decide playing at Alabama is the right thing for his future and his development. And, you know, people may follow recruiting on various websites, and the curtain has sort of been pulled back in some ways on that process in some cases. But take us back to that decision for Bryce. Like, why did you ultimately trust that it was Alabama?
And it's funny, and it's not even that long ago. So I think it's it's been 2 years. Is it how many seasons since he's gone? Two? Was it two or three? I can't remember.
Two.
Two. So 2 seasons since he's gone, and then so that's about and 2 years before that was the recruiting cycle. And now when you talk about recruiting, the the things that and the reasons why he's picked Alabama are so different from the reasons why people are picking schools now. Like it is like the environment and recruiting, and not an indictment on it, but just with NIL and collectives and rev share, it's just a whole different world. So for us, it was really about the football. It was really about what program provided Bryce the best opportunity to achieve his goals and to be the best football player and young man that he could be, and who had the best structure, who had the best tradition, and who had the best fan base, and who had the best track record of developing not only great young men but great football players. And when you went to Tuscaloosa and sat with Coach Saban and just saw everything the program had to offer, it was a no-brainer.
Obviously the feeling was mutual, right? I know that Coach Saban loved Bryce, obviously wanted him at Alabama. So I'm curious about the pitch that he made, like in the relationship that Coach Saban and his coaching staff had with Bryce and you and the family. How would you describe their recruiting pitch to Bryce and y'all?
Both coaches. I'm sorry. Bryce's primary recruiter was Sark, was Coach Sark back then. So right. So Sark was his day to get day, and then he would speak to Coach Saban about once a week, and it was scheduled with Miss Linda, and it was always a big thing because it was like he knew when he was going to be able to talk to Coach Saban, and Coach Saban recruiting. It's and those calls from Bryce Coach Saban were pretty private, so I tried not to eavesdrop, but of course I did. And Coach is really smooth. He's just very conversational. He'll tell you a lot about what's going on during practice. What were some of the he'll give you some game plan hints. He's just really, really a great recruiter. His kind of like how he is on TV right now. This you see that sense of humor, you see that dry humor, you see that wit, that sarcasm, a little bit that personality. You have that, but then when you ask about the pitch, the great thing about Alabama, we really don't have to pitch. There wasn't a pitch. It's just like, do you want to play against the best? And when he said against the best, it wasn't really, you would think what he meant was, do you want to play in the SEC? No, when you want to play against the best, that means every day at practice. You are practicing against when it's good on good session, you're going to be practicing against the best players in the nation. And then for your position group, you're going to be competing with the best. So it's almost a challenge. Are you mentally, physically, and emotionally tough enough to put yourself in a situation where you are going to be competing with the best players in the country? And are you kind of that, do you have that alpha mentality that you want to run to that rather than away from that? And those that kind of alpha competitive, very serious football type of minds and families are the ones that gravitate to Alabama.
Sure, and iron sharpens iron, right? Like we would hear Nick Saban reference good on good all the time. And I mentioned trust earlier, and what those of us who don't and maybe never will, know about having kids who play high school sports and reaching the next level at such a high level like Bryce has. How important is trust with the head coach of a program? I mean, that is where your son will presumably spend the next few years of his life and career developing as a person and as a player. What level of trust did you have in Nick Saban and his staff that Bryce would have the coaching and support that he needed to become the person and player that he is now?
The ultimate level of trust. 'Cause like you said, we're coming from California, so your kid's coming from thousands of thousands of miles away. You're going to be able to see him every day at lunch, breakfast, dinner, and now he's on a plane and he's in a city that you've never been to. So your trust level has to be very, very high. But we had a supreme touch trust in Coach Saban, but not only just Coach Saban, the whole staff and the whole program. And the great thing about the Alabama program is that it is set up for you to succeed. Now that doesn't mean, and when I say that, it means that a there's a department for everything. You're going to have your strength and department. You're going to have your nutrition. You're going to have your academic. Um, you're going to have your sports science, your sports psychology, your treatment, just everything that you need, your academic support, um, counseling, anything that you need to be successful. It's all there. So it's not only trusting in, and Coach Saban is trusting in each person in that department to address the your student athletes needs, whatever that is. And that was the thing that really um, sold us for Alabama. There was a complete program from top to bottom.
Well, and Bryce came to Alabama while they were in the midst of a quote unquote golden era at his position at quarterback.
Yes.
And then he obviously took them to the next level in many ways. And, one of his greatest attributes that people point out all the time is clearly his mental toughness and how he responds to adversity. So, like, what was his mentality as a true freshman? Like, young men want to play immediately, but Nick Saban and Steve Sarkisian ultimately went with Mac Jones as the starter. Like, how did that change his approach? And how did he stay patient in knowing that he would be next under center?
Wasn't easy. I mean, you come in there and he did not come in there to be the backup. He came in there to compete, and he had every plans to compete and to win the starting job as a true freshman. COVID happened. There was no spring. So then you come in there and it's not really a competition. It's really when after COVID and it was time to it was it was time. It There were competitive reps, but it was more about getting the team ready to play. And you had to go with the guys who were there. And that's not to say that Mac didn't earn the job. Mac was phenomenal. The record book show. I mean, I think he had the record for completion percentage, so no slide against Mac. It's just that there that wasn't really his opportunity, and so it was very, very difficult to not play. I mean, just to be very honest with you, and I think that was probably the first adversity he had ever faced athletically. And so he went through some very tough times. Always was happy for his teammate and always be the best was going to be the best teammate possible, but wanted to play. And you had to adjust. And so I think as parents, we have to allow our kids to go through adversity. And just because they don't play right away doesn't mean that they need to transfer. Doesn't mean you got to get into a portal, or it doesn't mean you got to look for another school. It just means that you know what, sit back, learn, develop, and embrace the role you have and stay ready for that opportunity. Because sometimes um, you will never know if you'll get that opportunity at that perfect place for you if you keep leaving. And maybe in that next place, it seems like people are just running for ready made the next ready made place, and that doesn't really exist. There's going to be competition wherever you go.
On
But
that note, right? I mean, the transfer portal is obviously busier than it's ever been, and it wasn't quite as chaotic then as it is
no.
now. But if players didn't like their situations, they would leave for a better opportunity, whether, that was financial or if they wanted more playing time. Why did Bryce decide to stay the course in Tuscaloosa? And were there ever any conversations about finding a different situation somewhere else?
Oh, never. We never not. We always knew that, and especially the year that Mac had. We knew that and that Mac was overclassed. We knew he wasn't coming back, and so um, as frustrating as it was, there was never a thought of leaving. And Alabama was where we wanted to be, and where so that was never a thought of that. It was a little bit probably was a little bit more difficult to leave back then than it is now with the portal, but that was just something that never interested us, and we knew that our future and that Bryce was going to be the future quarterback of Alabama Crimson Tide, and we were just going to wait our turn. However long that took, we were committed to being here.
Rare this day and age, to say the least.
Yeah.
You mentioned this earlier. Bryce, he also arrived at a unique time in college football, the dawn of the NIL era, right? And he became largely the center of that conversation. So, what challenges did that present you as a family and Bryce as a student athlete that he would now face as much financial scrutiny as he would as a football player?
Yeah, I'm probably one of the biggest Coach Saban fan that there is. I genuinely love the man. I think he's I personally think he's the best coach in all sports. And better than coach, he's a leader of men. How with that said, I was not happy with Coach Saban when when just out of the blue he tells the whole world that we've got millions of dollars of deals lined up and that Bryce is a millionaire before he took a college staff. I remember being at work and I just remember my phone all of a sudden just texting and just beeping, beeping, beeping. And then I remember the ESPN alert, and it hit like wildfire. Wow, and it was interesting because when Bryce called me, it was like I just looked at my account and I don't see I don't see any millions. So it was it was one of those things where yes, because NIL was so new and the concept of athlete being compensated for their name, image, and likeness. And then Bryce kind of became the poster for that because of the power of the brand of Alabama, and because you were the perceived starting quarterback at Alabama, which made you, if you played well, a potential Heisman Trophy candidate. Which then, and then also playing at Alabama, so many of your games are going to be nationally televised. That made you attractive to brands, and so then Bryce was able to forge some brand partnerships, and then with those deals, there was some revenue with that. However, because it was so new, that became the story, and that was a little bit difficult, and that put some undue pressure on. And that's what I was worried about. I was like, look, he hadn't even thrown it down, and people are already talking about how much money he has. And then if things go wrong, then are people going to subscribe that to it wasn't focused. It was just really focusing on NIL and all that stuff. So that was an additional pressure. However, it was just at a certain point, it was just like we're really not going to focus on that. We're going to let everyone else really make a big deal out of that, because at the end of the day, we always knew football was the main thing. And as long as you perform on the field, and his NIL uh, commitments or money or anything was never more important than team goals, because we realize if you win, especially if you win at Alabama and you play at a high level, then you're going to be successful. So I think now, 2 years into it, NIL and kids making a lot of money in NIL is not as big of an issue. I mean, now quarterbacks are getting out of the portal, and they're making two, three. I've heard $4 million. So that, I mean, n- pales into for- pales into comparison to the brand deals that Bryce were getting. So I think it was more the perfect storm of um, something new, and then the amount, and so it became a story.
The way that it's changed in just 2 years since Bryce has left college football is unbelievable, right? And I wonder what's something that maybe from your experience, parents don't know about navigating NIL. What surprised you about it, and what advice would you maybe give people who are now in similar shoes, or what advice would you give yourself if you could go back as you were entering the NIL landscape?
Mhm. Well, the first thing with NIL, rev share, however, whatever, make sure you have a good tax attorney when, because um, whenever you are making a lot of money or you change tax brackets, there is a tax expectation. So one, always making sure that. Two, for us and a lot of families, NIL is great, and I think it's long overdue. College athletes should have been getting paid a long time ago. Coaches get paid great. College presidents get paid great. Coaching staffs get paid great. Um, um, Athletic departments generate a lot of money. Tickets are a lot. So a lot of people have been making a lot of money in college football for a long time. So the fact that the athletes are making some shouldn't alarm anyone. So um, I just don't think it's. I mean, I think it's the natural progression of something that was long overdue. But with that said, um, I would tell parents to not focus on that, to honestly make decisions that are the best for your son's or daughter's growth, holistically, academically, athletically, and that put them in the best position, in the best school and program for them, and then the NIL dollars will take care of itself. But focusing and making decisions based purely on are on NIL, or it's very short term. And you want to make sure that you're set up for long term success, because even though it seems a lot of money, if you're making a lot of money at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that's not going to last you for the rest of your life if you don't manage it correctly, or if you're only living, or if 22 years old is the zenith. That's After that, you stop making smart decisions. That money will go away very quickly.
Well, Bryce is considered by many to be the greatest quarterback in Alabama history, and
Wow,
he made
says a
history.
lot.
Certainly, and he made history as the school's first quarterback to ever win the Heisman, as I mentioned
Yes.
earlier. And I mean, to do that at Alabama, that's pretty astonishing, especially when he faced such high expectations when he came to Alabama. And you were the
Hmm.
first person that he thanked when he won the Heisman Trophy. And he said, for always being there for me from day one. You've always been by my side, always been a supporter. You weren't just my father; you were a best friend. He obviously immediately then thanked his mom and the rest
Yeah.
of your family. What was that moment like for you, for your family? Like, what did it mean for you when you saw him hoist that trophy?
Oh, just surreal. I mean, um, I don't even think I dared to dream it. Like when even when he was youth football and doing great and college doing great, I wasn't like, and one day when he wins the Heisman Trophy, it just seems so unfathomable. Not because of any doubt in his abilities. It's just there's only one person wins that trophy each year, and there's only a handful of people, and so many things have to go. There's so many great players, I mean, but so many things have to go right to win that. And so and there's a lot of times in our journey where things didn't go right, and where we weren't projected to be where we were. He's 5'10" and a half, 170, 180 pounds, those type of guy at quarterback, from the West Coast, from California. Those type of guys typically don't win the Heisman Trophy. So it was just really, for us, we're a family of faith. It was really a testament to what you believe in God, and just that there's no limits to what God can do in your life if you surrender and turn it over to Him. And then the second part was just so proud of how much he sacrificed, and how much Bryce has delayed gratification, and to get to where he is. And it was great to see that hard work and accumulation of all those really good decisions um, coming together. So I just couldn't have been prouder, and that's one of the greatest nights of our family's life.
I went back and watched his speech today, and I want to read you a few of the comments, like under the YouTube video of his Heisman speech. And I don't want to embarrass you, so
Sure.
but please bear with me if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
So here they are: a speech filled with nothing but gratitude. You could tell this young man has been well raised. You don't have to be an Alabama fan to appreciate Bryce Young. Classiest speech I've ever heard from the winner of this prestigious award. That young man is a class act, what every father strives for his son to
Wow.
become. Both of his parents and Saban were bursting with pride. You can see how proud he made his parents. So that's high praise, obviously, but he has obviously made a strong impression on people. And people, including Bryce, give y'all a lot of credit for your role in his success and in his upbringing. Guiding and supporting your child in such a competitive landscape obviously tests parents in many ways. But what would you say has been the biggest challenge, and how have y'all managed it?
I think the biggest challenge is there's a lot of external factors that can derail even the best athletes, even the best plans, even um, the best, strongest family systems. Because at the end of the day, as you're building this, sometimes you can build this within your vacuum. Okay, this is our family, this is our structure, these are our do's and these are our don'ts, these are our absolutes, so these are our morals and our values. And when your kids are really really young, you can kind of control that environment. But as they get further and further away from you, then sometimes people, well-meaning and not well-meaning, will try to negatively influence your direction, will try to um, will try to question, or will try to question why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing what you're doing, or will bring in negativity, or bring in just a lot of ideas. So sometimes, so it's maintaining the focus and maintaining your absolutes and the things that you're important, and sometimes a world that doesn't champion that. And so that is so keeping that outside distraction, that outside noise at a minimum, and really focusing on what your goals are, what your values are, and what your morals say.
Appreciate you sharing that. And Craig, I've got just a few more for you, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Okay.
Um, I want to ask you about a couple of games
Mhm.
that
Oh,
Bryce played at Alabama. First, that Auburn game in 2021. I mean, he leads one of the all-time greatest drives in college football history, let alone Iron Bowl history and Alabama history. I mean, he already had a reputation for staying poised under pressure, but he was just a different beast in Auburn that night. What do you remember about that game?
I remember one. So we're going up to the game. We're playing Auburn. Everybody says, because we had a really good team, and Auburn had struggled a little bit. And I remember everyone saying, like, it's different when you go into that stadium. Like, weird things happen. I was like, okay, come on, like, really? I'm not superstitious. We're a better team. What are you guys talking about? Okay, I know I'm from the West Coast, and I don't know how this SEC things work, but we're fine against Auburn. Are you guys kidding me? So we go as the game starts, and the minute it does feel weird. It does feel different, and and as the game's playing, like, the offense isn't moving anywhere. Bryce isn't throwing it. Like, he didn't throw a touchdown the whole first half. I don't even know if he threw a touchdown in regulation, and that never has happened in any level of sports for him. I'm talking like 3-year-old scooter football. He never had he not he even would always manage to throw one touchdown. So I was like, this is insane. What's going? I had never seen a game like this. Like, the energy was weird, the aura was in it, and it was just different. And I've never prayed for a result. I always just pray for safety and health. But this game, I was like, God, if you can help us pull this one out, I would really appreciate it. I promise you, I won't ask you again. So I do remember that game. But then I remembered that once they got the ball on the one, when they got the ball at the 1 yard line, and and then I'm because I'm really good at looking at his body language, and I'm looking at his body language, and I was close enough to see his eyes, and then I saw him smile. I was like, okay, we're good. I knew, because I think in his mind, it's like, okay, I have not played well, but I'm still in it, and they still let me be around. It's over now. And so I knew then that we were gonna be just fine. And to this day, that's the most fun. I even sometimes pull up that clip and just watch that drive over and over again.
I think there was a close up of him smiling that the cameras caught, and I
Yeah.
think like that's when a lot of people were like, "Whoa, this guy's kind of a competitive psychopath, isn't he?"
Yes.
Like, and I remember, I think it may have been like a 4th and 13 on that drive where I think he hit, was it Jaleel Billingsley,
Yeah, he did.
going out of
Mhm.
bounds, just like one
Yeah.
of the most unbelievable throws considering the circumstances and the stakes. It was crazy. So what an amazing story and recall from that game. And you're right, somebody really should have told you, like, gotten real honest with you about what it's like in Jordan-Hare Stadium, especially
Yes.
for that game. But you lived it more than
I'm a
anybody else
believer
did.
now. Yes.
Well, so there are obviously like highs and lows in college
Mhm.
football, in sports, really. But
Yes.
I want to ask you about the national title game against
Oh.
Georgia.
Mhm.
I mean, he comes off a monster
Yeah.
performance in the SEC championship game. He cements himself as the Heisman winner. He leads them to a semifinal win over Cincinnati. And then there are obviously injuries on Alabama's roster. I'm sure that Bryce and others would say, like, no excuses, but it says a lot about Bryce that Alabama had a fourth quarter lead in that game before it just doesn't go Alabama's way, right? Like, what was that moment like for him and the family? Like, how does that inform how he approaches the offseason and then attacks year two as the Alabama
Yeah.
starter?
Just devastated. I remember wanting to console him after that game, and I couldn't even get to him. Like he just um shut himself in the room and didn't want to talk to anyone. It was just a very difficult time. Being so close, but then just having everything just having the bottom fall out of it. And that was a very difficult that was just a very difficult situation. And I know there's a lot of Bulldogs fans that don't want to hear it, and I get it. But SEC championship, we had Mechie and JMO healthy, and they couldn't cover either of them. So all I'm saying is if those two don't both tear their ACL in the championship, I things would have been different. And I know we can debate that, but I think the reality is the reality. So, but um, that was a difficult situation because it was at that point the defense had played as well as they were playing, but we had pressed players that were young to be in the situation that they hadn't been in all year. Um, to try to make plays against a great Georgia defense, and then we at the end just came up short. So it was very devastating. It's just one of those games I just wish we could have played healthy, but it is what it is. Now how that informed the following season, it was just just as more determined than ever to try to get back there and to get the team back to where it needed to be.
Another milestone, he became the first ever Alabama player to go first overall in the NFL draft. And I'm sure that that also felt surreal, but I know that it was a moment where, it probably felt like all the hard work had paid off. I mean, was that a chance to exhale and sort of reflect on that journey, or like once he's picked first overall, was that a feeling like, hey, we're just getting started, let's get to work?
A little bit of both. I think you absolutely have to savor that moment because again, you're one of one. There's only one. So like I said, there's only one Heisman Trophy winner. There's only one number one overall pick, and then to be the first one at University of Alabama, with so many great players having been there, it's just such a milestone. Again, hopefully that's something that inspirational to people who've been told because of their size, because of their measurables, um, that there's limits. And obviously, you have to be really good at your position and a really great athlete and a really high skill level. But a lot of times, we're often told what we can't do instead of really focusing on figuring out if there are obstacles, how to get past them, and how to strengthen all the other muscles around those obstacles to compensate and to get to where we need to be. And so it was just, and hearing his name and seeing, hug, hug. hug the commissioner, and all those things, and put on the hat. There's all those things that you see on TV, and witnessing that. It's just one of those moments that, yes, you know that there's bigger fish to fry, and that it's going to um, that does by no means that you've arrived in the NFL. But that day, you're not thinking about any of that. It's really a celebration. It's like almost like a graduation. It's literally like it's that you know that you know that there's life ahead, but that day you really think about and celebrate your accomplishments and all the things you went through to get there. And then when you're the first pick, it's like you're the valedictorian.
As a parent, I can't imagine. Craig, my last question for you. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot is asked of a number one pick, especially when you join a team that, has struggled and they need someone like Bryce to turn things around, right? But there's this level of impatience with the NFL, with
Mhm.
coaches and fans, the front
Yes,
office, where it's volatile when things don't
absolutely.
happen instantly. And, I
Hmm.
mentioned adversity before, and Bryce has faced a lot of it in just the 2 seasons that he's played in the NFL. And, this year, when he faced his greatest test yet, he comes back and he finishes the season as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And, that mental toughness comes back into play. I mean, staying the
Yes.
course and keeping the main thing the main thing. Like, what were those conversations like this past season as he continued to develop into the guy for the Panthers?
Yeah, yeah. Exactly what you said. It's one thing is when things are not going your way, and when things are you're not seeing the success, and then when they're, like you said, and remember when you said what are some of the biggest obstacles, is that outside noise. The professional sports is outside noise personified. So you've got guys whose their job is to tell you how terrible you are, and there's everyone has a platform. So there's all those things going on, right? So it's important to have such a very strong sense of who you are, and that means that's as a person, that's as a person of faith, as a Christian, and also who you are as a player. You can just because you're maybe not playing well, or not in a good circumstance, or not in a strong circumstance, you don't lose your confidence. You realize that, no, I'm still a great. I didn't forget how to play football. Things aren't going well for a myriad of reasons, but I know exactly who I am. I know my work ethic isn't going to change. My attitude's not going to change. My faith's not going to change, and I'm just going to keep plugging, and then and then when he was not playing, going to be the best teammate I can be, and then once I get that opportunity, I'm going to show the world who I am. um, and so that is what I admired about Bryce the most. Through that adversity, it's through adversity you find out who you really are. And and who Bryce was the same person he was during success. And so and that helped him get through that.
Wow. Well, someone with a unique perspective on raising and guiding a child and ultimately a young man through unpredictable territory like recruiting and NIL and the NFL at the highest possible level in sports. I mean, father of the starting quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, a true Alabama football legend, Bryce Young. Craig Young, thank you so much for spending some time with us
Thank
and sharing
you.
these amazing stories.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.